Time my friend snuck out of her house to see a boy and I had to cover for her in front of her parents. So this was our freshman year of high school, which made us at that time 14. So my friend, we'll call her Kate, she was talking to this boy, and she would always tell me how she snuck out of her house to see him at night, to have relations of sorts. One weekend she asked me to sleep over. She told me that she was planning on seeing him, and I was okay with it. I just didn't want to be in the awkward position of if she got caught. At the time, I don't know why I didn't see a problem with this, probably because we were kids, but the guy that she was seeing was 23. So anyway, we go in her basement. She tells her parents that we were going to watch a movie and then probably go to bed. So her parents go to sleep, and we hung out for a few hours until she was ready to go out. She had a giant window in her basement that she would sneak out of. Before she left, she told me to go up to her room to watch her get into his car. She told me that if her parents wake up, tell them that she's taking pictures of trees. Mind you, this is like 2 in the morning. So I'm watching through the window, and as she gets to the street, a huge white van pulls up, which concerned me. Story of the time I slept over my friend's house and she snuck out in the middle of the night to see a boy. Part 2. So I'm upstairs in her room looking at her window to make sure that she gets to his car, and a white van pulls up. Keep in mind, she told me that she's seen this guy before. So she starts running to the van. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of freaked out. So I started texting and calling her, and she wasn't answering the phone. And like I said, she told me that if her parents were to come in the room, to tell them that she was outside taking pictures of the trees. She left around 2 a.m., and I didn't get a text or a call back from her for hours. So I started contemplating telling her parents. I heard walking around the house around 6 a.m., so I turned off her light and laid in her bed and acted like I was sleeping. I also put pillows next to me to make it look like there was 2 of us in the bed. Her mom ended up coming in the room, but didn't say anything, and I was too nervous to tell her. So her mom goes back in the room, and around 7 o'clock, she finally gets back. She said she wasn't looking at her phone, cause they were, getting down for 5 hours. And she said she had a really great time. Turns out the white van was his work van. Story of the time a police officer pulled me over just to flirt with me. So when I first got my license, I would always go to Wawa in the middle of the night. Usually I would pick up my friend and we would go together. But this night she was busy and I was hungry, so I just went by myself. So I pull up to Wawa, and right after I got there, I see a police officer pull up. I didn't think anything of it. So I went inside, ordered my food, and while I was waiting in line to pay, I see the police officer walk in. He was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, really tall and muscular, and had blonde hair and blue eyes. Just an overall attractive guy. Right when he walked in, we made eye contact. At the time, I was 17, so I wasn't thinking like, ooh, arrest me, officer. I'm just kidding. But whatever, I pay for my food, go to my car. Then the cop comes out a few minutes after me, and he looks at me while I'm getting in my car. And I was really hungry and not trying to wait to eat, so I watched YouTube on my phone and ate my food in my car. So I finished eating and started heading home. Mind you, there was nothing wrong with my car. I didn't have tints, all my lights were working, and all of a sudden I see cop lights behind my car. So I pull over, and it's lo and behold the cop from Wawa. Like for part 2? Story of the time a cop pulled me over just to flirt with me. Part 2. So he stared at me at Wawa, waited for me to leave, and when I left, he pulled me over. Like I said, there was nothing wrong with my car. Also, I was 17 and he was probably in his late 20s. And yeah, he was attractive, but I was 17 and not interested in a 20-something-year-old. So he walks over to my car, but he didn't come up to my window, he came up to my passenger seat window, probably because the shoulder was really small and the cars were coming by fast on my side. But anyway, for the juicy part. So right off the bat, he was mad flirty. Like, you know how the way that somebody looks at you says a million words? Well, his eyes were saying 1,000,001. But anyway, he was like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, no, because I didn't. And he was like, what's a pretty little girl doing out so late without her boyfriend? First of all, little girl. Is that him implying that he knows I was a minor? Nah, I'm just kidding, but honestly, in the moment, I really didn't know why he pulled me over. So I just flirted back until he left.
Story time about why I beat up my best friend. So a little background information. Her and I had been best friends since we were in 7th grade. Her family was rich, mine was poor, and at first she was a really good friend. She was always there for me whenever I needed her. Until our freshman year of high school, which is when her and I started hanging out with boys. Now my mom was kind of strict. She wouldn't really let me hang out with boys, but her mom was more lenient about her hanging out with boys. Every weekend she would throw a party at her house, and she would throw them in her attic because 1, it was huge, and 2, her parents didn't give a fuck what she did up there. Anyways, she would always offer to do my hair and makeup before the party started, which always made me really excited because I never really put any work into my physical appearance. Well, little did I know, the only reason why she would offer to do my hair and makeup at these parties was so that way she could make me look like shit in front of all the boys. So after that, I taught myself how to do my own makeup and do my own hair, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I beat up my best friend. So like I said, I learned how to do my hair and makeup, and she went on vacation for like a month straight. Well, when she came home, she threw another party, and she was like, don't worry, after I'm done getting ready, I'll do your makeup and do your hair. And I was like, no, it's fine, I got it. She literally looks at me and she goes, are you sure? You don't really know how to do that. Like, it'll probably look really bad. And I'm like, why the fuck would you say that? She goes, no, like, I don't mean it to be rude. It's just that, like, I want you to look good in front of the boys and stuff like that. Like, sis tried to talk me into getting a shower for a full, like, 20 minutes. So after that, the whole night, she's literally being a pick-me girl. She's making all these comments about me in front of the boys, and I just keep brushing them off until her next party. We got ready, and I put on these expensive shoes that I had just bought, and she goes, wow, you just, like, really like to copy my style, don't you? So she starts making comments that whole night about how my family's poor and stuff like that, and she threw up all over my shoes. So I dumped the trash can that everybody had threw up in that night on her, punched her in the face, but, like, 2 months later, she came to my house and apologized.
Happy Pride Month! In honor of this month, I decided to tell a very embarrassing story. At least, it's embarrassing for me, and anyone who grew up in a church will understand why. So I was about 8 or 9, and every week I had to go to church. It was basically like Sunday school, except there would usually only be 2 other kids with me. But this time in particular, I was there by myself. So the lesson was about temptations. She started off the conversation talking about temptations to lie, steal, and cheat. She explained that it's not a sin to have these thoughts in your head, but it's a sin to act on them. So basically, you could stay up all night thinking about stealing a cookie from the cookie jar, but as long as you don't, you're not committing a sin. So, never said this out loud before, but the first thing that came to my mind when thinking about temptation was liking girls. So then I was like, well, what if I can't help thinking about it every single day? And she kept on asking me what I was thinking about, but I didn't want to say it. Until finally I said, kissing girls. And she was like, oh, that's awful. Story of the time my neighbor tried to pierce my belly button when I was 8. So you guys know an awful lot about, my neighbor's situation. She was known as the bully of our street. So anyway, one day she's like, okay, we're gonna play kickball. And I hated playing kickball because you know what kickball was to her? Having me stand behind a tree while she kicked the ball at me. Repeatedly. And you know why I had to stand behind a tree? So that neither of our parents would be able to see what she was doing. So obviously I was like, no, I don't want to play kickball. And she was like, we'll either play kickball or we'll play house. And I was like, okay, let's play house. So we go up to her room unsupervised with the door closed. And she pulls out her toenail clipper. And she tells me to pull up my shirt. I was like, absolutely not until you tell me what you're doing with that toenail clipper in your hand. She started convincing me that it wouldn't hurt and that it'll be a pretty belly ring when we're done. And I didn't know what a belly ring was. And she said an earring for your belly button. So I was like, oh, okay, word. Didn't go home with a belly ring.
This is why you never truly know someone. When I was 10 years old, I met my best friend. We were pretty much inseparable. All throughout school, we were always by each other's side. Our last names both started with J, so we had almost every class together. He was a smart kid and a model student. However, his home life wasn't the best. He also had ADHD and was bipolar. My family was like a second family to him. As we grew into adults, our views differed on what we wanted to do with our lives. He had his first child when he was 18 and split up with the child's mom, so the thought of college never sat well with him. He worked a 9-to-5 job instead to support himself. By 21, he met another woman and had a child with her. This time he was doing good. He stayed with her and was taking care of both of his children. I was really proud of him for stepping up and getting his life together. Suddenly, something inside him flipped like a switch. He randomly up and left that woman and moved to another state. I hadn't spoken to him for 2 months after he did this. One late night, I was woken up by a phone call from his mother saying that he was in jail. I asked what for and she told me that he raped a 15-year-old girl. He was caught and sent to jail. He was serving 2 years behind bars only because there were texts from that girl saying that she was 18 years old. 2.5 years went by when he finally got out. I told him he could stay with me until he was back on his feet, but he refused. Then things took a dark turn. Part 2 of why you truly never know someone. He decided to stay with my mom for a month instead. Every day I would message and check up on him. I would always get the same big answer saying that he's good and thanking us for helping him out. One day, my mom called me in a panicked state. She told me that he was in his room with a knife and threatening to unalive himself. I immediately drove over and talked him down, taking the knife away from him. Later that night, I called to check up on him because I was worried. He didn't answer. I called my mom to check on him and she said that he was in his room. I asked her to go check and when she did, he was nowhere to be found. Later, we found out where he had gone that night. Apparently, he walked over to his ex-girlfriend's house to spy on her and her boyfriend. I'm not sure what shifted in him, but he walked behind the house and ripped off a piece of his shirt. He stuffed the ripped shirt in a crack of the window and set the fabric on fire. Then he just walked away. He attempted to kill his child, ex-girlfriend, and an unknown man. Luckily, no one was harmed because the adults in the house were still awake and smelled the fire. They quickly got the children to safety and called the fire department. My best friend admitted to this and has since been in jail. After this, I stopped all contact. It's been 9 years.